Dr. Easterbrook, welcome to the committee, and I will turn it over to you. And just a little ground rules. During our work sessions, we try to keep it a bit more informal so people can ask questions because we consider this a learning opportunity for the committee here to be able to understand what's going on and what you're presenting. So there will be a bit more informal. We'll stop for questions as people have them going through.
That's fine. I'm open to any and all questions at any time. Let me start by saying that I'm happy to be here and share the information that I have with the committee. I have a lot of data, probably more than you want to know, and a lot of it is in graphic form. And what I will do is I'll show you the factual data for some of the assertions that are in Senate Bill 5502. And to do that, I'm relying on some sayings of our astronauts, which you see on the screen. In God we trust, all others send data. So I'm bringing data, and I don't ask you to believe any opinions that I may have. You'll hear very few opinions from me. What you'll see is a lot of data, and I hope that the data is clear enough so you can make up your own minds, and you won't need to ask what my opinion is. Whoops, let's go back one. To begin with, I need to say who I am, primarily because there has been a lot of politics injected into science these days. And so I am simply a geologist with 50 years of expertise and research in global climate change all over the world. I'm a lifelong environmentalist. I am a scientist. I'm not political. I don't have any particular bias towards either party, so I have no political agenda. I'm not associated with or funded by any business group. I'm not a shill for big oil, big coal, big anybody. All of my research has been funded by governmental agencies. And I'm currently working actively with an international group of geologists, atmospheric physicists, meteorologists, astrophysicists, oceanographers, and sea level experts, and other sciences in various parts of the world. You know, that's where I'm coming from. I thought I might start by listing some things that you probably don't know about or haven't heard about because the news media isn't telling you. And I've listed a few of them here. There are a lot more, but some things that I will touch on later in the presentation. And that is that global warming ended in 1998. That may come as a surprise, but I'll show you the data for it. And it is indeed true, and that has been admitted by the chairman of the UN group that has been pushing CO2 as causing climate change. Even he admits there's been no global warming in 15 years. The Antarctic ice sheet is not melting. Contrary to headlines you'll see about every other day that the Antarctic ice sheet is melting at an accelerating rate. It not only is not melting at an accelerating rate, it's not melting at all. The main ice sheet, and I'll show you the data for this, is in fact growing, not melting. So we don't need to fear that the ice caps are going to suddenly melt and cause all kinds of problems for us, because they aren't. Sea level has been rising globally and also locally at a rate of about 7 inches per century, as we're thawing out from a little ice age which occurred about 500 years ago. And the projections of anywhere from 5 feet to 20-foot rise of sea level, as you'll see when I present the data, is beyond reality. Snowfall is not below normal. There have been headlines from time to time about, in the Cascades, certainly, that the snowfall in the Cascades is diminishing because of global warming. That's not true. For the past 5 years, have set snowfall records, both globally and in the Cascades. CO2 cannot possibly cause global warming. That will come as a shock to you, I'm sure. And the reason is that there's so little of it. It is a trace gas. It has increased in its atmospheric content by only 8/1000ths of 1%. If you double nothing, you still get nothing, and I'll comment more about this later. Severe storms are not more frequent than normal. When we get a big snowstorm in the east, they say, oh, it's because of global warming. When we hear about a hurricane on the East Coast, they say it's because of global warming. It isn't. And I will show you data that shows that actually the extreme events, severe storms, are actually declining. They're not becoming more frequent. And finally, you may be surprised to know that the oceans are not acid. Oops.
Mr. Chair?
1 second. Let's.
You want to go back?
I think Senator Ranker has a question.
Oh.
I'll have several later. Most of them I'll wait until the end. Just on that last point, the oceans are not acid. Are you saying that ocean acidification does not exist, or are you saying the oceans entirely are not acid? I think all of us would agree with that. Nothing is an acid, so.
The oceans are not pH, which is a measure of acidity, is measured on a scale, and 7 is neutral. The oceans have a pH of 8.2, which is alkaline, not acid. And I'll show you why they are not going to become less alkaline, much less more acid, with increasing temperature change, if that in fact were to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to clarify my question, I'll be a little clearer here then. Do you believe that ocean acidification exists in the world's oceans today and here in the Northwest?
No. I'll show you the data. I'll talk about this in detail. If you'd like to wait till I get to those slides, it'll be clearer, I think.
Badly. Thank you.
It's very clear, and I'll show you the data. So what I did was I looked at specific issues that form the basis for Senate Bill 5802, and I listed 6 of them. And so what I did was I pulled out data that relate to all 6 of these premises that are inherent and form the basis for Senate Bill 5802. Regardless of the language of the bill, this is what the bill was based on as of this weekend. And you can read them, but emissions of greenhouse gases is the principal cause of climate change. A lot of data, I'll show you that. Sea level is rising at an increasing rate because of global warming. That's not true. I'll show you the data. Frequency of severe storms is increasing because of global warming. That's not true. Reduced winter storm packs and decreased summer stream flow is not true. Increasing acidification of the state's marine waters. That may or may not be true in terms of the state's marine waters. Certainly it's not true of the oceans globally. And finally, the production of more electricity from renewable energy while phasing out coal-powered electricity generation. I'll just show you some data that shows what this would cost, and without commenting on whether coal plants are good or not. I'm not particularly in favor of coal-powered generation, but there are some numbers you might be interested in. So let's take these one by one. The first one is that greenhouse gases from human activities.
Dr. Easterbrook, Senator Anker has another question.
Can you go back to the last slide? I didn't understand what your point number 6 was trying to get at. I heard you mention coal, that you're not necessarily in favor of coal-fired generation. What's your point there? What are you going to tell us about?
My point is to show you the relationship between coal-powered generation and other forms of electricity generation, how much of it is from each of these categories, and what the cost of each is, and what changing from one to another might involve. I have no opinion on that. I'm just going to show you some numbers.
And how that relates, sorry, Mr. Chair, and how that relates to climate. Or you're just going to show us the costs on the generation?
Well, it relates to climate because the rationale for moving from one form of energy generation to another is climate. Is how much CO2 you put in the atmosphere. If that's not a realistic assertion, then it doesn't matter. But if it is, then there is a concern that it's related to climate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.